All right, this morning we are going to be working on graphing, horizontal, and vertical lines. And as we get started on this, I want to start by reviewing some things we already know. So one of the things we already know is that there are 4 types of slope. So this is one of the things that we are already familiar with. We know there are positive slopes that go uphill. We know there are negative slopes that go downhill. We know there are zero slopes that are horizontal. So this is the one of the types of lines we're going to be graphing today. And then we know that there are undefined slopes, which are our vertical lines. So for the last little bit, we have been graphing these 2 types over here. So this is what we've been doing. So this is where we have seen our old buddy y equals mx plus b so much. Our y equals mx plus b lines are either positive slopes or negative slopes, and we find that number right there in front of x. So today what happens is we switch our focus to these 2 types. What do the equations for horizontal lines look like? What do the equations for vertical lines look like? And how do we graph those? So here's where we've been with our y equals mx plus b's. That's the positives and the negatives. And here's where we're going, the horizontals and the verticals. All right, so to get us started on this, I think what I'll do is start with some graph paper. And I'm going to take a minute here to draw an x-axis and a y-axis. And then I think I'll come over here right next door and draw another one. Whoops, that's not very straight. And I think what I'll do is on this graph, I think I'll put a horizontal line right here. So here's where we will talk about the horizontal line and what we can see. And then I'm going to come over here and draw a vertical line right here. And over here is where we will make some observations about that vertical line. All right, so let's come back over here and let's start looking at our horizontal line. What are some things that I know about this red line that I see right here? Well, one of the things that I know about it is that for this line, my slope is 0. Horizontal lines always have a slope of 0. So that's something I know for sure. Something else we've been doing with lines is we've been talking about identifying their x-intercept and their y-intercept. Now if I come up here and I look at this red line, what I'll notice is he never touches this x-axis down here. So for the x-intercept, there's actually none. I do have a y-intercept. I'm crossing the y-axis right there. Here's the origin, so that would be up 2 spaces from the origin. So my y-intercept would be 0 for x and positive 2 for y. So I am crossing the y-axis and I'm crossing it at 2. Something else I might want to do for this line is actually look at a table and look at some of the points on it. So this would be a good point to start with. That point if I write the ordered pair, the x would be 0, and then I'm up 2, so 0, 2. We've already got that. If I come over to this point, starting from the origin, I go to the right 2 on the x-axis, which would make it 2 for x. And then I go up 2 on the y-axis, so that would be 2 for y. If I were to look at this point, starting from the origin, I would go to the left 1, which will make my x a negative 1. And then I would go up 2, which will make my y a positive 2. And then if I go maybe over to this point, starting from the origin, I would go to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, which will make my x a negative 4. But then notice I'm still going up 2, so my y would be 2. So I want to point out something here. I want you to notice when I start looking at a table of points for this horizontal line, that all of the points have a y value of 2. So I have a slope of 0. I have no x-intercept. My y-intercept happened at 2, and I want you to notice that the y value for every single point in this table is a 2. So your equation for this line, is actually going to be y equals 2. I want you to notice it is not a y equals mx plus b equation. It only has a y because this line only has a y-intercept. This equation doesn't have an x in it because this line never touches the x-axis. And I want you to notice it makes sense that it says that y is equal to 2 because every y on this line is 2. All right? So equations for horizontal lines are going to be y equals equations, and there will be no x. No x because there is no x-intercept. Now let's come over here and let's look at our vertical line and do kind of the same thing. Let's look at the things we know about it. Well, the first thing I've done with lines, of course, is find slope. And I know this up and down line will have an undefined slope. If I start talking about an x-intercept and a y-intercept where it crosses the x and the y-axis, here is my x-axis, and I'm crossing the x-axis right there. Starting from the origin, that's to the left 1, 2, so that would be negative 2 for x, 0 for y, so negative 2, 0 is my x-intercept. My y-axis is right here. You'll notice this line never touches it, so none is what I would write for my y-intercept. And then again, if I come over here and do kind of the same thing I did and look at points, we know we have negative 2, 0 on here. Let's do another point. Let's do this one. To get to that point, starting from the origin, I would have to hop to the left 2. So that would make negative 2 the x. And then I would have to go up 1, 2, 3, which would make 3 the y. Okay. If I were to do this point, starting from the origin, I would have to hop to the left 2, which makes x a negative 2. And then I would have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So negative 5 would be the y. So notice again here kind of what's going on. When I start looking at a table with points, these y values over here are all over the place, but the x's are staying the same. Kind of like what happened over here. The x's were all over the place, but the y was always 2, which happened to also be the y-intercept. Over here, the x's are all staying the same. The y's are all over the place. So on this one, your equation is going to be x equals a negative 2. So horizontal and vertical lines are only going to have one letter in them. And that one letter tells you which axis they cross and where. So a horizontal line is only going to have a y. And it's going to tell you where that horizontal line is going to cross the y-axis. A vertical line is only going to have an x. And the number is going to tell you where it crosses the x-axis. Now, there is a way to remember this. Throughout your time in math, we have used kind of nonsense words sometimes to help you remember things. So one example of that would be, you all will remember at some point doing PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. We use that to help you remember the order of operations. We are going to use kind of a similar technique here of taking two things that aren't really words to help you remember what I just said, okay? So the two words I'm going to ask you to remember are HOY, H-O-Y, and VUX, V-U-X. Now, how will this help you to remember what we just said? Well, the H stands for horizontal lines. They have zero slope, and they have a y-intercept. And that y should be the only letter in their equation. Over here with my other nonsense word, vertical lines have undefined slope, and they have x-intercepts, which means that they will only have an x in their equation. So let's come back over here and apply that to our two graphs. This would be a HOY. It is a horizontal line with zero slope, and it only has a y in its equation, and y is equal to 2 because that's where it crosses. This would be a VUX. A vertical line has undefined slope, and it crosses the x-axis at a -2. All right, so that's what we're looking at. This is what we need to know. All right, so let me get set up here to show you some examples of what you're going to be doing today. So I'm going to have to do a little rearranging here on my board. So if you'll give me just a second to get that done. Enlarge these just a bit. Okay, so you'll notice over here we have some lines drawn, and our directions are up here. It says to write the equation of the line shown on the graph. So we are going to write the equation of the line shown on each of these graphs, okay? So on number one, I'm going to write my answers over here. On number one, I have to write an equation for this graph. Now the first decision you need to make is this an x equals or a y equals? And here's how you're going to make that decision. Does this line cross the x-axis or the y-axis? And the answer is this line crosses the x-axis right here. So because this line crosses the x-axis, he is going to be an x equals equation. Now, the only other thing I need to know is where does he cross the x-axis? Well, starting from the origin, I'm going to the left 2. So he is crossing the x-axis at -2. So x equals -2 will be the equation for that line. So remember what I did. Does it cross the x-axis or the y-axis? That tells me what letter to write down, and then I look to see where it crosses to get my number. All right, let's look at number 2. On number 2, does that line you see cross the x-axis? No. Does it cross the y-axis? Yes, right here. So this is going to be a y equals equation because it crosses the y-axis. Now where does it cross? Well, here is 0, and it crosses up 1, 2, 3. So that's positive 3 right there. So y equals 3. All right. Let's look at number 3 on here. All right. Look at the line. The line they've graphed is way down here. Is he crossing the x-axis? No, he doesn't touch that. But is he crossing the y-axis? Yes, right here. So this is going to be a y equals line. Now the question is, where does he cross the y-axis? Well, here's 0. So I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down 5 means that would be a negative 5. So I'm going to write y equals a negative 5. So notice what I'm doing every single time. Which axis am I crossing? That tells me what letter. And then where does it cross? All right, let's do one more of these. Let's do number 4. On number 4, am I crossing the x-axis or the y-axis? So here's x. Do I cross it? And the answer is yes, right there. So this is going to be an x equals. Where does it cross? Starting from 0, we're going to the right 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So that would be a positive 4. So when they give you the line and say, what is the equation? Ask yourself, where does it cross? Where does it cross? And then, no, I said that wrong, I'm sorry. Ask yourself, which axis does it cross? Does it cross x or does it cross y? That'll help you get the right letter. And then after you have determined that, then where does it cross? All right, so now the second thing you're going to be asked to do in today's assignment is to graph some lines. So look at this number 7 over here. They're going to ask you to graph y equals 5. All right, so let me get us set up over here to do a graph. For some reason, it won't let me write on that actual worksheet that I'm projecting, so that's why I'm having to do it on a split screen like this. Okay, now for this problem, I want you to notice that we're trying to graph y equals 5. So because the variable y is in here, that means we are going to cross the y-axis at positive 5. So we're going to start at 0 and go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to cross the y-axis at 5. So on the y-axis, I go up to 5, and that's where I put my dot. Now, do I draw a horizontal line through this point, or do I draw a vertical line? This is where remembering Hoy Vux will help me. Hoy Vux. This has a y in it. Hoy has a y in it. So you need to draw a horizontal line for y equals 5. So the letter tells you which axis to cross. The number tells you where. So we're crossing the y-axis at 5. And then Hoy Vux. Hoy has the y. So we want to draw a horizontal line. All right. Let's do number 8 over here. And you'll notice on number 8, we are graphing x equal to a negative 1. So let me get us set up. All right, so notice what this equation is telling you. You're going to cross the, oh, and I didn't label, did I? X, Y. All right, you're going to cross the x-axis at negative 1. So starting from 0, you're going to go to the left one on the x-axis. Now, again, the only question is, do I draw a horizontal line or a vertical? If I think about Hoy, Vux, this has the X in it, so I need to draw a vertical line through that point. Okay. Let's look at number 9. We'll do just a couple more of these, just so I'm sure you've seen enough. X, Y. And notice on this number 9, we're graphing x equals 3. So which axis are we going to cross? Well, we're going to cross the x-axis. Where will we cross? Positive 3. So starting from 0, we go to the right 3. Is this horizontal or vertical? Is it a Hoy or a Vux? Well, I'm crossing the x-axis, so it is a Vux. This is a vertical line. Hopefully this is making sense to you the way I'm making these decisions. If not, email me and we will straighten it out. All right, let's do one more. We're going to do this number 10. Get a setup for it. X-axis, Y-axis, and this time we are doing Y equals a negative 2. All right, so which axis am I going to cross? Well, this tells me I'm going to cross the Y-axis. Where? At negative 2. So from 0, I'm going down 2 to get to negative 2 on the Y-axis. So right there's where my line's going to cross. Is it a Hoy or a Vux? Well, it's crossing Y, so it's got to be a Hoy. And also notice, since this is crossing Y, that means it's not crossing X, so you kind of have to run parallel to that X. That could be another way to think of it too. And like on this one that we did, it's crossing X, can't cross Y because it doesn't have Y in it, so it's got to run parallel to Y. That would be another way to think of it. All right, so that is horizontal and vertical lines. Each type of equation will only have one letter, so only an X or only a Y. And that tells you which axis it will cross and where it will cross. If there are any questions, please be sure and let me know.